But what I would like to speak to is to what is this work about? Or what is this teaching about? What is this path about? What is it all about? How can it be summarized? How can it be niched in a rich marketplace of spiritual offerings? What is it about? Because we found ourselves for many years in a perplexing situation where the visceral nature of experience of those who have not just tiptoes there with this work, but immersed themselves to whatever degree, and yet always falling short for how to relate about this work. We even, believe it or not, within our own teams, we used to sit down and think, what is the fitting way of speaking about it? How to convey to others? What would be, let's say, the most appropriate language to use? So maybe to give this somewhat retrospective perspective so that there is a greater clarity. If I were to push to simply say it in one line, in one sentence, what this is all about, then I would possibly have to humbly agree and simply say that all this boils down to recognition of the fact that there is no reality other than this reality. Or speaking in plain language, that this is a life-affirming teaching. This is the teaching that affirms life, not negates life, not comes up with some utopian ideas which can replace this life. So I would like to say a word or two to that. We are always formed and reformed and formed in again by the ideas we are exposed to. As Friedrich Nietzsche has said, ideas that come in dove steps rule the world. It is the ideas that become the blueprint behind our actions. Therefore, so much attention has been given to ideologies since the time immemorial. Whenever it was understood, ever since, ideology is that what would drive the collective consensus, what would give something to society, a group of people, small or large, a certain framework, a certain consensus shared reality, which is then becomes the very, very driving force behind motivations and so forth. And it just happened that with some of us, the understanding doesn't come with experience. With some of us, it happens that understanding was all there ever was. Experience simply reaffirms that, reconfirms that. And I tend to think that that's what happened here, personally speaking. There was already a fully formed platform of understanding perhaps which was more intuitive than I would have been able to articulate with clarity. But when push came to shove, as they say, and all this was experienced, and when I went through the process firsthand, what I came up with is the strong conviction that what all my life force need to be poured into now. Friedrich Nietzsche just happened to be perhaps the last and the most important philosopher I've read, although elsewhere I say that was Martin Heidegger. I never understood Martin Heidegger, I have to confess. Never understood him. What do I mean by that? I mean by that, I knew that picking up Martin Heidegger is in line with what was the Nietzsche's message all along. From the very first work already aforementioned in this setting as The Birth of Tragedy, to the later work as Will to Power. Martin Heidegger's work could be considered as the continuation of the same line of thought. What Nietzsche pointed out prophetically in the 19th century was picked up by Martin Heidegger in the first half of the 20th century. Namely, insightful, unapologetic, merciless criticism of the entire Western civilization, or rather, premises upon Western civilization is being built. Nietzsche went as far back as 2000 years, which encompasses in itself the entire Christendom, all the way back to the ancient Greeks, where the ideas of Christianity are originated. I would make a leap now, please hold on and try to follow, that the ideas of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels would not be possible without the reevaluation of the ideas known as Platonism, which were reincorporated into the ideas of Christianity as that exposition of Abrahamic, let's say, revelations. All this is linked together. The ideas of socialism themselves derived from an attempt to remodule something which is inherent to Western culture. And Nietzsche pointed out straight to the wound of nihilism. Nihilism, which is a result of attempts, repeated attempts, to build utopia, to build societies based on some kind of ideology which promises salvation one day. You've heard me often speaking with critical assessments, with some kind of joke like dismissal of the peoples who are known today in a society as being larger than life. Elon Musk and the like. All these ideas of going to Mars, launching ourselves to space. All these ideas would not be possible. They would not exist unless at some point our connection to Earth was not severed. It is because the connection to the geocentric understanding of where we live, how we live, and what life itself comprises of, that served as a fertile ground, as a playground for all these ideas and ideologies, including the interstellar, intergalactic traveling. All this is intimately linked. All the ideas and ideologies that one can find since the times of Plato, all throughout Christianity, to the invention of these ideologies of the 20th century, socialism, fascism, totalitarianism. All this is linked together with the attempts to build a better society, a better future, to create a new man. There is a term, new reality. The term was coined out by Nietzsche, the new reality. The proponents of the new reality, they came strong and forceful, And the result of these ideas of the new reality boomeranged in the rise of the nihilism in the 20th century, which took our culture by storm. And this is why my critical assessment of movements such as satsang and non-duality, primarily because I can see this as being nothing more than continuation of that same line of thought, the line of thought that there's no purpose in life. Life has no purpose, no value. It does not proceed anywhere. All these equalizing perspectives on everything, awareness and bust, all this is what we're experiencing is epiphenomenon. It's not important. All this is but a bluff. All this is but an illusion. When I came to teach, I clearly saw this, literally, as this newly arrived, assessing this whole situation and realizing that this is a really a messy place which will take a long time to bring some clarity. We begin our work slowly with those peers in the field who also felt similar, who thought in similar lines, who also understood the limitations and above all else the faulty premises of that what spiritual movements here brings. And it brings nothing new. It's a revamping of old religious beliefs that there is some kind of salvation, that there is some kind of other reality other than this reality, that there is greater reality, reality of awareness. Reality of awareness replaced the reality of God, reality of Godhead, reality of heaven. It became very clear to me that everything that I have ever known, everything that I have ever stood for, is here now a fertile ground, a new canvas to paint. Bigger canvas. I don't know yet what colors to be used. This is what this work is about. This work is about this life and nothing else. There's no other reality. Never was and never will be. In this respect, if I'm an avatar of anyone, I'm an avatar of Friedrich Nietzsche. If anything reincarnated here, I speak in the same vein of thought, deep criticism of the entire premises upon which our culture is built, which are rotten according to Friedrich Nietzsche, and exaltation of earth. The main message, if you are to go back and reread, as I trust some of you have read Nietzsche, it's a must. Nietzsche is that. You want to graduate from being an adolescent into a grown man, woman, must read Nietzsche. It's literally like that, transition. Nietzsche is the one who comes as a great healer, a great physician, a true shaman, who walked his talk to such degree that he truly went absolutely mad. Mad, in a sense, totally free. Majnun. That's the term in Arabic. Majnun has a holy connotations, just like in the Nizami's famous epic Laila and Majnun, that love story. Laila and the madman. Nietzsche's message was prophetic, even though over 100 years old. Prophetic. Way before the artificial intelligence, he pointed out, we are going to the abyss, the way the culture is going, but it has been going on for a very long time. All these attempts to build a better society, constantly, a better man, all these ideas went all too apparent in the ideologies of socialism, communism, and fascism. We can see how new attempts of building a new man, engineering new men, this is now taken on to the next level. Fascism never dies. Yes, Germany, where we're sitting now, was divided between the armies of the Allies. The territory of Germany was strictly divided by spheres of influences between the countries who considered to be the winners, so they could sit down in Yalta and decide how all this will be divided. Between the Stalin and the Churchill and the Roosevelt, all this was decided. Spheres of influence. The largest chunk went to the sphere of Soviet Union, another chunk to the Great Britain, another chunk to the United States, and an additional chunk to France, the influence. Those of you who probably know the history know this better than I. 4 parts that Germany was divided into. 4 parts. This is the victorious allies have decided. So as to go through the demilitarization, denazification, and all the other Ds I don't remember, there's a long list. Decentralization as well, because there was fear. The German nation has a very powerful tendency to rise from the ashes. God forbid they will rebuild themselves. No such thing will be allowed. Marshall Plan was introduced by Machiavellic minds across the Atlantic. Marshall Plan. You've been told Marshall Plan was you put $1 in, you take $2 out. That's a joke. The Marshall Plan is to make sure Europe will never rise, ever, because Germany is the only country which can unite Europe truly as a superpower. So everything was made in such a way that Germany will never rise as economic superpower or political one, God forbid. But why am I saying this? Why am I doing this detour? It's because no attempts for denazification can drive fascism out of the crevices where it can travel, and it exists in many, many forms in many, many countries. I'm not even talking about the members of the Ku Klux Klan or some brigades that have been now reabsorbed into the governmental structure of Ukraine. I'm talking about the ideas that are now attempting to rule the world about the greater futures that awaits us as long as we can go follow these ideas of transhumanism. You've seen this famous Michelangelo's excerpt from the Sistine Chapel, where the Godfather reaches with his hand with this life force giving to his son Adam, and Adam declining there like a playboy. I mean, come on, it's a very, very on-edge painting on the Sistine Chapel, right? The birth of Adam. You know what I'm talking about? 2 hands, right? And now the hand of God is replaced with an artificial intelligence machine shining like a kind of, plasmic, some metallic looking, silver, platinum, whatever, substance. These ideas that somehow humanity will intermingle, intermarry, intercohabit with artificial intelligence will become a savior of all our calamities. It will bring a new second coming of Christ, to put it in that language, because that's what it belongs to. It belongs to the same ideology that is surviving century upon century upon century, going all the way to the ideas proposed, promulgated by the great Greek philosopher Plato, which gives rise to the Neoplatonism. Great philosophers of the West already have suggested there was nothing new in Christianity, nothing absolutely new. Christ's teachings was monopolized and institutionalized, and it was basically ideas of Plato for the masses. Neoplatonism broke down to the basic, accessible ideas to a common folk. Socialism simply takes it onto the next level by removing the idea of the Godhead and replacing it with the state. The same thing happens now. All our bets meant to be placed into the notion that the state somehow has our well-being in its hands. are the same. In the meantime, we find ourselves in cataclysmic proportion crisis when it comes to what it means to be human beings in this moment in time, while spiritual teachings are only spewing and spinning the same old ideas and tunes of nihilism. You have never existed, this is not important, what your senses, what your body, what your this, this is like a phenomena, what are these flowers, give me a break, I'm spirit, I'm awareness. Seeing through all this great confusion, centuries-old, millennia-old confusion, filled my heart with great sense of urge. Otherwise, I would have most likely went back to doing art, to be honest with all of you. Because there's much, much more. It's closer to my sensibility. This, sitting, speaking, working, is not. I have to be honest. Everyone who knows me knows I like nothing more than being left alone. So, what I'm trying to say is this. You come back from this immersion and you want to share how it was, and someone asks you, what is this work about? Feel free to simply say, this work is about here and now loving this life for what it is, and there is no other God. Never was and never will be. Everything else is the byproduct of a wild imagination gone bonkers. Of course, umbrella need to be brought, strong umbrella, convincing, philosophical, esoteric. So the trick Shaivism, also known as Kashmir Shaivism, served that. I dived into this consciously that I will become at least a beginner level scholar so that I can hold the conversation. So purportedly, some of you have heard, in 1 year I read 16 scriptures. 16 scriptures so as to get really versed in this whole thing. And I found great confirmation, and I now understand why this philosophy became that indeed prophetically spoken by Rabindranath Tagore as the last best kept secret of India, so in vogue, because it's a true alternative, a true saving grace of our time, because this philosophy exalts geocentric perspectives of the medieval times and going before, prior to Plato. Yes, you've heard me, you took the Yoga of Integrity. Plato was used there as a great example when we talked about human qualities, and we talked about human condition versus Platonic values. But Plato was the philosopher who gave complete and radical departure from what then Martin Heidegger would try his best to restore. Martin Heidegger was known, this great German philosopher, whose association with the Nazis made him persona non grata for many, many decades. He was even a forbidden philosopher in certain countries. You were not allowed to teach Martin Heidegger. He was a member of member of the Third Reich Party. Pardon me, not SS. Member of the Nazi Party. It's a move that he had to take in order to be able to continue to teach from his cathedra. His main work was encapsulated in 3 or 4 books, all dedicated to Pre-Socratics. He revived that whole idea, Pre-Socratics, philosophers who came prior to Socrates. All of them were considered Philosopher-Sages. At that time, there was no distinction between sage and philosopher. After Plato, that line began to get blurred, and philosophers became to be known just that, men who philosophize. They don't need to have access into the nature of being, essence of being. The crucial message communicated by Friedrich Nietzsche was a warning to our civilization of the widespread of nihilism that he predicted. 20th century is a conflicting, rich with events century which perhaps our ancestors will, not ancestors, our generations to come will be able to fully evaluate what it was. But we cannot deny that the ideas of nihilism touched every sphere of society. Absolutely all of them. Starting with even science, which declared there's no, the more I looked into the universe, right? Who said that? The less reason I see there. The more I looked into this open space, cosmos, the less all this makes sense. To the ideas that became prevalent in the arts, all arts, we spoke about it yesterday a little bit. The ideas of nihilism began to be the main trends. If the artist is not driven by nihilism, he is out. Outlived, archaic. Everything. What is nihilism is characterized by? Nihilism is characterized by strong belief, strong conviction that there is no purpose in life, that life is devoid of purpose. Existence has no purpose. And there is a direct connotation, direct correlation between the other side of the same coin of trying to build utopic societies, of trying to project some utopia for future generations or as a salvation in this life. Why? Because this life becomes unbearable. This human condition becomes unbearable. Not only there is zero understanding of what this is, shrouded in darkness, shrouded in complete and utter whatever we may use as an epithet here. It backfires with negation of life as we know it, so that one is propelled either into utopian ideas or willingly enters the path of self-destruction. And this is what we've chosen. We have chosen a path of self-destruction, a path of annihilation. Après-midi, la déluge. After us is a flood. Let it all end with us. Who gives a damn? Is a motto of our culture, motto of our civilization. So this is in a nutshell what this work is about. This work is an alternative to nihilism because it stands in opposition to that what nihilism here is. And at the very same time, it stands in opposition to all these philosophies and esoteric perspectives on the existence of some otherworldly spirit, otherworldly reality that is somehow superior to this life. So, I have spoken thus. Okay? Thus, something spoke, and I wanted to share this to get it off my chest.